Hi, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Terrence Moore and Jim Miller. The Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Dr. Tamara England Wilson, the chair of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. Tamara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today.
Awesome.
So first, we are colleagues. We both serve on the Maryland Commission of African American History and Culture. And for our audience, will you tell us what is the commission?
Well, the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is a 24-seat body appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate to help solve problems of government. Through our service as commissioners, we are expected to advocate and to act ethically on behalf of the citizens of the state. Our specific work includes operating the Banneker Douglas Museum, the state's official museum on African American history and culture, and overseeing the African American Heritage Preservation Program grant, the state's $1 million capital grant, Among other things, the commission provides training and technical assistance to the African American heritage projects and groups throughout the state.
Excellent. And can you share for us how long the museum has been in existence and a little bit of that history?
Well, the museum or the commission?
Let's start with the commission.
Okay, well, the commission was founded in 1969 by the late Senator Verta Freeman Welcome, Maryland's first African-American female state senator, in response to the civil unrest that occurred following the assassination of Dr. King in 1968. Senator Welcome believed that sharing the significant contributions of Black people throughout the state would help uproot and diminish racism in our state, as well as instill cultural pride in the Black community.
Talk about, so we talked about the existence. So how do you feel that the commission has done in terms of achieving its mission? What are some of over its history, what are some of the things you can point to that suggest, this was a success story, this was a win?
Well, the commission is committed to discovering, documenting, preserving, and collecting, promoting Maryland's African American heritage and culture. True to our mission, the commission has worked diligently to preserve this history as a tool for long-term social change. This has been done through our preservation grant program that has to date awarded nearly 150 grants totaling over $11 million to preserve historic buildings, communities, and sites of cultural relevance around the state. One of our many success stories can be found in the Prince George's County area, where we've helped to position the historically Black township of North Brentwood as one of Maryland's premier African American heritage destinations through grants awarded to preserve a historic site that's called Sisters Tavern. This tavern was owned by local African American residents and has been an important commercial and social fixture in the community, first as a grocery store and later as a juke joint where Pearl Bailey and Duke Ellington once performed. We've also awarded funds to the Prince George's African American Museum to support their building expansion. But projects such as these have occurred across the state. We've awarded funds in 22 of the 24 jurisdictions in Maryland to restore churches and cemeteries, schools, communities, and cultural centers, former slave quarters on plantations. We've even funded places such as bowling alleys and homes of significant historical persons. But we're proud of all of that. But I must say that we're proud of that Banneker Douglas Museum. The museum is listed on the National Historic Preservation Registry, and it is an underground railroad network of freedom site. And there's so much going on at the Banneker Douglas Museum. We've this year alone, we've reached 50,000 plus people through online educational programs and events. We've developed virtual exhibitions. Um, we produced 6 free anti-racism training sessions for young adults and adults. So there's a lot of great work that's going on through the commission. It's spread all across the state through our partnerships and initiatives with partners around the state.
Yeah, that's a laundry list of great work. So thank you for your service above all. Thank you for joining us today as well. There's been a lot of conversations, a lot of documentation around the benefits to African American communities by having a better understanding of their history, their culture. Can you talk about some of the benefits that you've seen that has really reflected in the African American community across the state of Maryland?
Well, some of the benefits would be our involvement with issues that come up. Um, sometimes, sometimes, oh goodness gracious, I'm, I'm sorry. So, following the murder of George Floyd in 2021, our commission teamed up with the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Both commissions work collaboratively to issue a statewide call to action aimed at addressing racial inequity and discrimination and economic disparities in the state. And so partnerships such as these help us to address issues that impact African Americans around the state. So that's one of the things that we've been able to accomplish.
Chair Wilson, since our time on the commission together, one of the things that I am particularly proud of is that there has been more representation here in Western Maryland in regards to dollars coming to this part of the state. And this past grant cycle, we had a project that was funded in Garrett County, our most western county. Going forward, how do you see the commission moving in regards to making sure that we continue to be inclusive in some of the rural counties that have not traditionally participated?
Well, one of the things that has been helpful is our grant workshops. We are doing them virtual, and so we're making sure that these workshops are publicized so that organizations around the state have access to them. And we are definitely committed to ensuring that grant funding is across the state. As I said previously, we have provided funds for 22 of the 24 jurisdictions, and we hope to be able to expand and be able to have projects in all of the jurisdictions around the state.
Yes. Thinking back to the heart of COVID, the other thing that we participated in together was the painting of the Breonna Taylor mural in Annapolis. Can you speak to how that project came together and how the commission became involved?
Well, that was a project that Historic America, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact name, and I feel bad for not having that name correct. But we were approached and asked to participate in this project because of the work that we have been doing. And so we gathered together with partners in Annapolis. We found the location. The mural was painted on the ground. And over a 2-day period, commissioners, community members, elected officials came out, and we painted this beautiful mural to pay tribute to Breonna Taylor. And that's one of those things that we do to try to bring attention to the lives of African Americans, not just here in Maryland, but lives of people around the country that also impact those who live right here.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of your commission, and I know that you and Reggie serve together, what is the other representation? What are their, are they from across the state? Talk to us about who else serves with you on this commission.
There are commissioners from all of the jurisdictions are represented. Baltimore City, uh, every county, there is a commissioner that is represented on our commission. And as I said, they are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate.
Nice. And you had mentioned earlier that you've done projects in 22 of the 24 jurisdictions. And so I guess my question is, do you find that the historical treasures that you're uncovering exist more in certain geographic areas within the state than others?
Well, not really. There are interesting projects all around the state of Maryland. Um, African Americans are in every county, so that means that there's history in every county. And so COVID has prevented us from traveling to each of the counties. We used to have our meetings in different counties every other month, but now our meetings have become virtual. But when we were traveling to different counties, we were able to see the true resources that are in these different counties. We were able to speak to people who were a part of the history that's in those counties.
And with so much going on, are you seeking out these opportunities for engagement and involvement, or are individuals from these counties and across the state reaching out to you? How does someone get in touch with you and bring and put something on your radar?
Through commissioners. Commissioners serve as representatives for their counties, and so opportunities come to us that way. Opportunities come to us through our public meetings. There were issues that were addressed in a public meeting some time ago around the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our state funding. And so the commission got involved with that. And as a result, there's a work group that has been developed to begin to look through the decision-making process to ensure that state funding is equitable across the state. Some opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, with our work with the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, come to us as a result of things that are happening around the state. And historically, I want to say celebration, historic celebrations that come up. For example, we're celebrating the bicentennial of Harriet Tubman, and there's a kickoff celebration coming up in February the 16th at the State House. So these opportunities come to us from different directions and from different resources.
Yes, and I know you mentioned Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Have you seen an uptick of people reaching out more since we've seen a more of a focus on social justice across the state?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned previously, we had some free trainings on anti-racism, and so these trainings were to capacity because people are really interested in making sure that they are not uh, infringing on people's rights, and that they are not that they're being diverse in their treatment of people and of their boards and their staff. So yes, to answer your question directly, yes, there is an uptick of people really wanting to know how to diversify, how to make sure that it's more inclusive.
Excellent. Chair Wilson, we're going to go to a break. Will you stay with us and talk some more about the commission and get a little bit more into the great work that we do all over the state?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're still joined by Dr. Tamara England Wilson, the chair of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. Chair Wilson, thank you for staying with us. We're really enjoying this conversation. At this time, can you talk a little bit in regards to the African American Preservation Grant and its impact around the state, and talk a little bit in regards to the dollar amounts of that and how much a project can receive?
Well, the African American Heritage Preservation Program, typically the grant is $100,000 or less. So you can get up to $100,000. And applicants who demonstrate a project that furthers the understanding of the African American experience in Maryland are the kinds of applications that we're looking for that address a significant need in the community. There's maybe an urgency to the historic site being preserved. We look at the scope of the project goals. We want to make sure that any project that we are funding, wherever it is in the state, really addresses African American history and culture in a significant way, and that the organizations that are applying for these state funds are able to manage the projects well, that it has a public benefit. So the types of projects that we're funding, as I said, whether it's a church or a school or a cemetery or a community organization's cultural center, it really has to have a public benefit. It can't be something that you just are looking for money for, but it has to preserve history in some way and have a benefit for the community.
So when we talk about public benefit, and specifically looking at schools and churches, so are these buildings that we're preserving, or are these active schools or active churches potentially? Can you give us some insight on to how that might work?
Well, it could be an active school or an active church. However, for example, a church could be, let's say a church is 100 years old, and that it was built by former enslaved persons. And it served the community for, all of these years. And the exterior of the building is, having some I'm not an architect, so I can't use the correct words, but it's not stable. And so we could fund something like that. So we don't fund stained glass windows or altars in the church, but we restore the actual structure of the building.
And are there buildings that you can point to that is a result of these funds that were actually saved from destruction or demolition? Is that something that's in your purview?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, how about I shoot the question back over to Commissioner Turner, and he can talk about a project that we funded right in his neck of the woods.
Yeah, so in our community, John Brown's farm was funded. It was having structural issues.
That is not the answer I expected, but that's great.
Yeah. So they received $100,000 in funding. When she was talking about the uniqueness of projects and community access and use, the Robert W. Johnson Community Center was also funded with $100,000, because that is a perfect fit in regards to total community access, because that pool and that facility served as the Black YMCA. Mm-hmm. So the historical value is there for that. The other one that in our county that has been funded is the Williams School that was at Fort Frederick. It was a black school that was there, and that is in the midst of being revitalized there. So in the past 3 grant cycles, we have received over $300,000 here in Washington County from the grant.
So the Williams School that's being renovated now?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't even know about that.
Yes.
So how does the public learn about that? How does the public benefit from that? What is the plan for that?
In the midst of COVID, we've kind of lost track in regards to their process of doing so. Our public meetings, normally you will get an update. So for instance, 2 years ago at our public meeting, it was here in Hagerstown at the Fine Arts Museum, and representatives from Fort Frederick were there talking about that project and how that was going to move forward.
But that will be a part of the Fort Frederick experience. If someone was to visit there, they could tour that and
Yes.
see some historical artifacts.
Yes.
Wow, that's neat.
And I would also put out there the economic growth that comes from some of this revitalization as well, because we see property values that are increasing, and a lot of communities that haven't been invested in, divested communities. So you see property values increase, which brings in businesses and adds taxes to the tax roll. So counties and cities actually benefit from a lot of this work as well, and as well as created some jobs in revitalization that are well-paying and sustainable as well. So it also, and when I asked earlier about the impact on communities, I can only imagine how communities feel to learn about history in their own community, to see the jobs come in, to be able to help small businesses, and then to see their property value and pride actually increase as well through the work that's being done through this commission.
So the John Brown Farm, for example, and I'll use that as an example, but we don't necessarily have to speak to that specifically.
Yes.
But so there's two costs there. There's the cost to renovate, but then there's the cost to maintain.
Yes.
What do the people that are bringing these projects to the commission, what do they have to provide in terms of proof or a plan for preserving this building that's going to be updated on a long-term basis? Because I'm assuming this is a one-time funding thing from this group.
It is a one-time funding thing, but they can come back for additional projects at another point in time. But I am not a part of the grant committee, so Chair Wilson, can you speak to what you're looking for in those projects in regards to the long-term sustainability?
Yes.
Okay, well, when you look at first, let's talk about the budget. So we look at the overall budget. Is it a realistic budget for the proposed program? Or I'm sorry, the proposed project that they're working on. We look at the cost. Are they reasonable? So we're looking for the sponsoring group to be able to sustain the project once we have provided these fundings for the project. We're looking for the project to be sustained. We don't want the building just sitting there. We want them to be able to maintain it. And we're looking for the project to have a projected useful life of more than 15 years. So we're looking for a commitment for at least 15 years for the projects that we fund.
Yeah, that answers the question. So you actually look at the financial plan for these organizations that are applying for money to make sure that it is a sustainable project.
Absolutely.
Or sustainable building or whatever the case may be for at least 15 years. So that's the return on investment.
And is there any matching dollar requests that's associated with this grant?
Not for our grant, no.
And just to clarify, Chair Wilson, our grant program is only for capital expenditures, correct?
Not
Yes.
operating budgets.
At this time, yes, it is.
Right.
Reggie mentioned about your public meetings. I believe you have one coming up here soon, correct?
Correct. Monday, February the 7th at 11 o'clock.
Okay. And how are these public meetings? Or anyone can just show up? Is it an agenda? What's the main purpose of these meetings?
Absolutely. Anyone can attend. It's a public meeting. Right now, we are virtual. So that information is on our website on how to connect. The agenda is posted about a week before the meeting. So you'll know exactly what we're talking about. Most meetings we have a guest who will come and share similar to what Commissioner Turner spoke about their project that has been funded, or something that they're looking for the commission to fund, or an issue maybe that they want the commission to support, or to stand against with them. So it could be any number of things that's going on. Our last commission meeting of, let's see, in December, we focused on the legislative session, our plan of what we were going to do when the session began, in order to address some of our funding needs.
That's good. Anything that stands out on your legislative agenda?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked that question. So our biggest challenge as a commission, of course, is funding. And so we have submitted a bill. We're waiting to get that number so that I can give you that information, and perhaps you'll help to support it. But we're calling it the Verta Welcome Act for the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. And this bill will increase our funding and our capacity at the Banneker Douglas Museum, and our grant program. We're asking that our grant program that is currently $1 million a year will be increased to $5 million, because as you heard, we have all of these wonderful projects around the state, and we get, I would say we get on average of about $3 million worth of requests a year, but we're only able to fund $1 million. So we're asking for that grant program to be increased. And we're asking also for $3 million for us to do some renovations of our museum. We have some major problems in the building. And so we need the state to help to support those things. So it's a statewide mission. We have a statewide focus. We have commissioners from all around the state. And so, of course, commissioners are out there doing their part to speak to their legislators to gain this support that we need for this funding to increase the work of the commission around the state.
So the funding piece of this has the grant historically, or has the funding historically been $1 million, or was it raised at some other point in time?
It has been $1 million since the grant funding began 10 years ago.
Okay, so you've really gotten no increases.
We've never had an increase.
So if you think about inflation, right,
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah,
those dollars are definitely not going as far
right.
in today's market.
Absolutely. And some organizations have applied year after year. And, these are organizations that are grassroots kinds of organizations, and so they need the support to be able to actually put the grants together. They don't have the staffing, and so sometimes their grants are not they're not competitive enough, so they go on the side and they try again another year. But again, we are only able to fund $1 million worth of projects. And typically that's somewhere between 10 to about 13 projects a year.
In some cases, there are projects that are probably important projects that are not getting funded as a result of the fact that the organization that is requesting the funding just doesn't have the resources to create a winning grant request.
Absolutely.
So the follow-up to that would be, if you look at, and I'm sure there are a percentage of your projects that come in that you look at and you say, yeah, this is not something we can fund, because I'm sure that happens. It happens everywhere. But would you be able to estimate, of the number of projects you get in, are there, what is the percentage that you say, wow, we really should fund this, it's just a money issue, we don't have the funds? Can you estimate how many projects or that might be? Just a rough estimate.
I would have to say that this year we funded 13 organizations, projects. And I would say that we turned away, let's say the top, maybe about 20 that we really wanted to give them something, but we just did not have the money.
So you have more that you're unable to fund that you consider to be valid projects than those that you are.
Oh, absolutely, yes. This year, I believe we had well over 48 to 50 uh, grant applications that really were excellent, but we just could not fund them.
Understood. Wow.
Chair Wilson, in regards to the increase in funding for the grant preservation program, is that bill written for that only to be for capital expenditures, or is there operational funds to help organizations increase their capacity?
Yes, there are operational funds in there as well.
Okay. And as you said, that's the biggest issue for a lot of organizations. They don't have a lot of the know-how that they need to be able to efficiently walk through these processes. And so that would be huge if we're able to accomplish that in this legislative session.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Chair Wilson, we want to keep you a little bit longer and talk a little bit more about the good work of the commission and talk about the stewardship and the dreams for the future that you're leading us towards. So will you hang with us?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Chair Wilson, thank you for staying with us. You've given us tremendous information in regards to the commission for our community. You know, our community here in Western Maryland is not as familiar, so this has been an invaluable time that we've spent with you. But Chair Wilson, we cannot leave this conversation without you talking a little bit about who you are. I think the one unique thing in regards to the commission that Governor Hogan has put together, everyone is not a historian or a genealogist or an architect. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, that's a great point. So yes, my training is as a speech language pathologist. I've practiced for 19 years in the Baltimore City school system. I now serve as a pastor of a church in Baltimore City in the Park Heights area. And so I'm just a lover of African American history and culture, and just making sure that African Americans are empowered to live great lives in our great state.
And what was your path to the commission? I'm sure you hit the governor's radar somehow.
Isn't that interesting? Because I was contacted and asked if I would be interested in serving on the commission. And there was some hesitation there because I'm not a historian by training, but I was encouraged to apply, and the governor and his staff thought that I was a good fit, and I was appointed, and here I am serving as the chair about 7 years later.
Congrats.
So you came in as a commission member, and then you were promoted to the chair, or how did that work?
Yes, I came in as a commissioner. I served on several committees and did some work with other commissioners. And 2000, I believe it was in 2020, I was elected by the current commission as its chair.
You'd mentioned commissions, or committees. Talk about some of the committees that are part of this commission and how they function or what they do.
Okay, well, we've talked a lot about our grant committee. That is one of our standing committees, of course. Then we have, let's see, we have, goodness. Can you ask me that question again? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just the question was what are some of the committees that you have as part of the commission, and how do they function?
Okay, so we have a finance committee, we have the historical search Preservation and Publications Committee. We have the Banneker Douglas Museum Program Committee. We have special committee, as we talked about earlier, our grant committee. We have a governance committee. And then we have special committees that come up depending on what's going on. Something may come up and we may need to have an ad hoc kind of committee to work on an issue. But we have committee chairs. Commissioners are encouraged to work on at least one committee and to serve in that capacity. Members of the community, the public, are able to work on committees to serve the commission in any way that they would like to. And so I encourage any of your viewers, listeners, or who are interested in working with the commission to contact us through our website.
Very good.
Chair Wilson, you have led the commission through, I think we'll look back and future generations will look as a significant time, in our history. We, in the midst of a pandemic, social unrest, insurrections, a lynching and reconciliation commission. And from my perspective, you've done a wonderful job, and I love serving under your leadership. But more importantly, in the rest of your tenure, where do you see taking to the commission and beyond?
That's a really good question. When I was elected as chair, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the commission. It was a very exciting time. We were celebrating and raising money to support the Banneker Douglas Museum. And then we entered into a pandemic and we had to shift. We started dealing with the issue, as you said, of racism that just smacked us right dead in our faces on the television screen when we watched George Floyd be murdered. We witnessed the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And so the commission had to pivot. We had to make a shift. And so our focus began looking at these issues of social justice. And so we are dedicated to ending systemic racism. We have addressed issues within the state funding, as I've said earlier. We want to address it. We want to make it clear that it's just not right, and we can't be silent. And so the commission has a commitment to speaking up, to also promoting racial healing. We provide funding, we provide programming through the Banneker Douglas Museum that helps us to get to a place where we can heal racially and to have those difficult conversations. And so for my term, I want us to continue to move in this direction, to be a place where, a safe space where these conversations can be had, but not just having conversations, but to put together a real plan of action of how we really deal with matters of race and getting to a place where we can heal and then we can reconcile.
And on top of all that, there was COVID. There was a pandemic. All right. So I'm just impressed about what you were able to accomplish, even during that time when the world stopped, but the work kept going. Share with us some of the learnings that you had that came out of COVID, or some of the ways you had to change the organization because of COVID.
Well, the first thing is we could no longer travel around the state to see all the beautiful sights and to have our meetings in beautiful buildings, historic buildings. So that changed immediately, and we went to a virtual setting. And but what COVID did for us, it helped us to become involved around the issue of health equity. we began to have conversations with medical professionals who talked to us about what we should be doing to address hesitancy in our communities. And so we were able to host listening sessions with the University of Maryland Medical Center and Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, where doctors came and talked to us about the vaccine. They talked to us about why it was important for us to socially distance. We talked about the historical relevance of why people today don't want to be vaccinated. And so it put the commission in a place of realizing that while we are preserving buildings and we're preserving spaces, public spaces, it's also important to look at people and to make sure that we're preserving African Americans as well as our communities.
So one of the things that you've touched on several times during our conversation is the notion of preserving African American based cemeteries. Do we know that there are more out there that need assistance? If we don't know that for a fact, do we anticipate that there are? What is our thought process there?
Absolutely. There are, I don't want to put a number on it, but there are lots of African American cemeteries that are really deteriorating, falling apart. As for an example, this year we were able to fund the Laurel Cemetery in Baltimore City. Uh, Unfortunately, over time, a store, a whole shopping center was built over top of a cemetery that holds the remains of African Americans. And this has happened across the state. And we are trying to address this to get additional funding to make sure that we preserve these places where people are interned. And it's sad because these are our ancestors. These are people who mattered to people, who made a difference in people's lives. And so we ought to treat them with dignity and respect in these places. And so yes, there are many cemeteries that need to be addressed and need public funding.
So my last question for you is this. From the standpoint of the support from the delegation and the delegates and the senators in the state of Maryland, obviously they've given you some level of support because they're giving you money every year. They established the commission. Do you see that support continuing? Do you see it increasing? Do you find that there's more interest in the stories that you're bringing to the table from the elected officials?
Most certainly, yes. Elected officials are learning more about the commission. Historically, the commission has been there and has done great work for over 50 years, but not everyone knows what the commission is doing or has done. And so I applaud you for having a segment like this to talk about the commission. And so elected officials are reaching out to us, and we've been reaching out to them to inform them about what we do. We recently partnered with the Legislative Black Caucus, and we are in partnership on many things. And so, yes, elected officials are interested in our work, and they have lent their support to the work that we're doing. And hopefully, the support that they've given us will materialize in the passing of our bill this legislative session to increase our funding for the work that we do here in the state.
Great.
And the one thing I wanted to add when you were talking about the cemeteries, even in our own community, we have cemeteries in Clear Spring and Keedysville that are in need of help. And we also have one at Halfway on the property of Elizabeth Paul that she has been taking care of.
I'm aware of that
has old Civil War veterans there. So those resources are needed in our community just as much as they are in other places in the state.
Great.
Yep. And just one last thing for me as well is I know the elected officials supporting you is extremely important, but they are elected to represent the people. How can anybody and everybody lend their support? I know that we can testify now virtually on your bill, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing that bill out there and hopefully lending our voice. But how can anybody else get involved and get engaged, and what can the rest of the community do to support you?
Just what you said. They can write letters, they can testify. And if you go to our website, you'll be able to find more information about it. You can, we know that there are people who are writing support letters, and I think that's important. You can reach out to your elected officials and tell them that you want them to support the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, and not just support us in our work, but to support us financially, because this work cannot be done without funds.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well said. Without funds, the work doesn't get done. So it doesn't get any better than that, Chair Wilson. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to following up after session to talk about our success of the bill passing.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you much. Well, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and most importantly, follow us on the flipsidetv.com. That's flipsidetv.com. And join us again next week for another episode of The Flipside.